For centuries, there's been this big mystery sitting at the beginning of some of the Quran's most important chapters, these strange, disconnected letters. Their meaning? Officially unknown. But what if we've been looking at them all wrong? What if they aren't meant to be read, but to be run? In this explainer, we're diving into a fascinating theory that treats these letters not as symbols, but as lines of executable code.
It all boils down to this one really paradigm-shifting question. Just think about it. What if the Qur'an isn't a book to be read, but a system to be run? Kind of like an operating system for human consciousness. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with that core mystery of the letters. Then we'll unpack this whole idea of an executable system. We'll get into its engine, the 237 law, see exactly how the letters switch it on, and finally get to the ultimate goal, achieving something called the mark of cool fire. All right, let's dive right in. We'll start with the enigma itself, these letters that have had scholars scratching their heads for centuries. If you've ever opened up the Quran, you've almost certainly seen this. Alif Lam Mim. It kicks off some of the most foundational chapters, and yet, traditionally, nobody can say for sure what it means. And it's not just a one-off thing. It keeps happening. Here's another one, Ha Mim. These little clusters of letters pop up again and again, and they're clearly a deliberate, important part of the text. And sometimes they get even more complex, like this 5-letter combination, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. Their placement is always so specific, right at the beginning of a chapter, which really suggests they're there to do something very specific. Okay, so the formal term for these is Muqaṭṭaʿāt, which literally means the disconnected or disjointed letters. And for pretty much all of history, the question has always been, what do they mean? But here's where we get the big paradigm shift. This theory suggests we've been asking the wrong question all along. It's not about what these letters mean, it's about what they do. And this is the core idea right here. The Qur'an isn't just symbolic, it's executable. So think of it less like a novel and more like living software that's designed to be run on our own consciousness. Okay, so if the Qur'an is an operating system, what's its engine? What actually makes it run? Well, according to this framework, it operates on a really fundamental principle called the 237 law. Let's start with the first layer, the 2. This represents a fundamental choice, a simple binary decision that you have to make before absolutely anything else happens. So, whenever divine guidance, what this theory just calls light, comes to you, you're faced with that choice. Option 1, you can store it patiently. Think of it like potential energy in a piece of wood. Or, option 2, you can burn it instantly in an impulsive, fiery reaction, basically wasting all its energy. Now, let's say you make that first choice to store the light. Well, it doesn't just jump straight into action. Nope. First, it has to pass through the second layer of the system, the 3, which is a mandatory 3-stage processor. And these are the 3 steps you can't skip. First, there's injection. That's when the guidance or command just enters your awareness. Second is curvature. This is where your intention gets measured, corrected, kind of bent into its proper shape. And finally, convergence, where the decision, whether it's to act or to hold back, gets locked in and recorded. And that brings us to the final layer, the 7, the outcomes. See, after that guidance has been correctly stored and then processed, it just naturally resolves into one of 7 lawful states. And these aren't emotions you pick. They are the natural results of the process. And these are the kinds of effects we're talking about. Things like restraint, patience, measured action, or even just peace. The key thing to get here is that you don't choose these emotionally. They just emerge automatically when you've run the system the right way. So the whole system is really governed by this elegant little formula. 2 makes the choice, store or burn. 3 processes that choice, and 7 resolves it into a lawful, stable outcome. Which, of course, brings us right back to where we started. Where do those weird disconnected letters fit into this whole 237 system? Well, here's the kicker. According to this framework, they are the activation keys. Think of the Muqaṭṭaʿāt like headers in a piece of code. They configure the processor before you even start reading the chapter. For example, when you see ALM, it sets the system to a land as law mode, which is perfect for chapters that are laying down foundational principles. HM, on the other hand, signals a pressure and decision mode for chapters dealing with accountability under stress. The letters are silently setting the rules of engagement. So what's the whole point of running the system correctly? What's the end goal here? It's about achieving a very specific state of being, a state the Qur'an itself actually describes as cool fire. The sign that you've done it right isn't some big rush of excitement or urgency. In fact, according to this, that feeling is a sign you burned the light way too early. The real exit sign, the proof of successful storage, is a state of calm clarity, of peace. That's how you know the potential has been preserved, not wasted. This quote from the source material just sums it all up so perfectly. The mysterious letters aren't there to teach you what to think. Their job is to teach you how that divine light should be received, how it should touch and be processed inside of you. And that brings us to the ultimate goal, cool fire. It's this amazing state where divine guidance has been successfully converted into stored potential, like that wood we talked about. It's ready for authorized action that produces peace and benefit, not the destructive heat that comes from a knee-jerk reaction. And this really leaves us with a pretty mind-bending thought to chew on. Could it be that ancient wisdom is less about belief and more about a kind of technology for consciousness, just sitting there, waiting for us to run it?